What marriage really means according to God. Powerful biblical truth about marriage. Before there was a wedding aisle, before there were rings, before there was even a word for romance, there was God, shaping the very first man and woman with his own hands, breathing life into them and joining them together in a bond that was meant to echo his heart for eternity. Marriage wasn't born out of human tradition. It came straight from the Creator's design. That means it's not just a social arrangement, not just a shared house or a shared bank account. It's a living, breathing covenant that carries the fingerprints of heaven. But somewhere along the way, the world has blurred that truth. We've turned marriage into a contract that can be broken when love feels inconvenient, when passion fades, or when our own desires seem louder than our promises. We've started treating marriage like it's about personal happiness instead of God's holiness. And yet, deep down, something in our soul still longs for the kind of love that doesn't walk away. That's because God planted the blueprint for covenant love inside every heart. This is why we have to return to the source, not just to hear what marriage is supposed to be, but to let God Himself redefine it for us. When we see marriage the way He sees it, everything changes. The way we love, the way we forgive, the way we fight for one another when the storms come. Today, we're not just talking about relationships. We're talking about a sacred mystery, a reflection of Christ and His church, a union heaven recognizes, a promise written in eternity. And my prayer is that as we walk through these truths together, you won't just understand what marriage really means according to God. You'll feel it deep in your spirit, because this is more than a topic. This is holy ground. Number 1, marriage as a covenant, not a contract. When God first spoke the words, "The two shall become one flesh," in Genesis 2:24, He wasn't drafting a human agreement. He was creating a divine reality. Marriage covenant isn't simply two people signing papers. It's two souls being joined by the hand of God Himself. A contract says, "I'll be with you as long as you meet my expectations." But a covenant says, "I'm staying even when you can't." A contract protects personal interests. A covenant lays them down. Malachi 2:14 reminds us that God is a witness to every marriage covenant. That means when you stand before Him and vow to love, honor, and cherish, heaven records that promise. You aren't just making a promise to your spouse. You are making a sacred vow before the Almighty. And God takes covenant seriously because it mirrors His own faithfulness. Think about it. God doesn't walk away from you when you fail Him. He doesn't withdraw His love when you struggle or fall short. His covenant love holds fast, even when you don't deserve it. That's the kind of love He calls us to reflect in marriage. In a world where relationships can dissolve with a signature, covenant love shines like a lighthouse. It says to your spouse, "I'm not leaving because you've changed. I'm not leaving because life got hard. I'm here, in joy and in sorrow, in gain and in loss." We are one, and that oneness is sacred. This is why covenant is so powerful. It's not built on how we feel in a moment. It's anchored in the unchanging God who keeps His promises. And when you see your marriage as a covenant, you stop looking for escape routes and start looking for ways to love deeper, forgive quicker, and fight for each other harder. Number 2, marriage as God's reflection of Christ and the church. If you want to understand God's vision for marriage, you have to look at the cross. In Ephesians 5:25-27, husbands are told to love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave Himself up for her. That's not just a poetic verse, it's a call to radical self-sacrificing love, the kind of love beats, the kind that prays in Gethsemane, "Not my will, but yours be done," and then goes to Calvary to prove it. Husbands, when God calls you to love your wife like Christ loves the church, He is asking you to make her safety, joy, and well-being more important than your own comfort. It's not about domination, it's about devotion. It's about washing her with words of life, speaking blessing over her, defending her dignity, and holding her heart with gentleness. And wives, in Ephesians 5:33, God calls you to respect your husband, not because he's perfect, but because your respect breathes life into him. Just as the church trusts Christ's leadership, you model trust, support, and partnership. This isn't about silence or passivity. It's about being a life giver, an encourager, a safe place for his heart. When a husband lays down his life in love, and a wife responds with respect and trust, something extraordinary happens. The world sees a living parable of the gospel. Every act of patience in the midst of frustration, every moment of kindness in the face of misunderstanding, every choice to serve when it would be easier to turn away, it all becomes a reflection of Christ's unwavering love for his bride, the church. Your marriage is meant to be more than a love story between two people. It is meant to be a love story that points upward, that says to the watching world, look at what God's love is like. It stays, it serves, it sacrifices, and it saves. Number 3, marriage as a union designed for oneness. From the beginning, God looked at Adam, perfect creation, flawless garden, unbroken fellowship with the Creator, and said, "It is not good for the man to be alone." Genesis 2:18. Those words weren't about loneliness alone. They were about God created Eve not as a clone, not as a servant, but as a perfect counterpart, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, someone who would complete the picture of his image on earth. Genesis 2:24 says, "They shall become one flesh." This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's a spiritual reality. Oneness is more than sharing a home or a last name. It's the intertwining of lives, hearts, dreams, and destiny. In God's plan, you no longer live as two competing individuals. You become a united force, walking in step with His will. But here's the truth the world doesn't often tell you. Oneness is beautiful, but it's also costly. It requires laying down parts of yourself for the sake of the other. It means learning to listen when you'd rather speak, to forgive when you'd rather hold on to the wound, to prioritize unity over being. It means merging two different histories, personalities, and ways of thinking, and asking God to weave them into something stronger than either could be alone. When oneness is lived out in marriage, it becomes a shelter. It's a safe place where both husband and wife can be fully known and still fully loved. It's the kind of unity that faces life's storms as a single, unshakable wall, where if the wind knocks one down, the other pulls them back up. It's a unity that reflects the perfect oneness between Christ and the Father. John 17:21, showing the world that love doesn't just survive, it thrives when rooted in God. Number 4. Marriage is a place of holiness, not just happiness. One of the greatest misconceptions about marriage is that it exists to make us happy. Yes, joy is a gift in marriage, but it was never God's primary goal. God's heart for marriage goes deeper. He designed it to make us holy, to refine us, to shape us into the likeness of His Son. In James 1:2-4, we're told to consider it pure joy when we face trials, because those trials produce perseverance and maturity. Marriage is one of the most powerful tools God uses to do that work in us, because nothing exposes our selfishness, impatience, and pride quite like the intimacy of daily life with another person. And nothing gives us greater opportunities to practice grace, mercy, and humility than loving that person through every season. Think about it. When you and your spouse hit a wall, misunderstanding, financial strain, illness, emotional distance, those moments force you to choose. Will you retreat into resentment, or will you lean into God asking Him to teach you how to love like He does. Every trial becomes an altar where your comfort is sacrificed and your character is transformed. Romans 8:29 tells us that God's goal is to conform us to the image of His Son. Marriage gives us a front row seat to that process. It teaches us to serve without keeping score, to forgive without waiting for an apology, to love when it's inconvenient, and to trust God when our own strength runs out. And here's the miracle. When you pursue holiness in marriage, happiness often follows, not as a fleeting feeling, but as a deep, unshakable joy. Because the closer you both grow to God, the closer you grow to each other. You begin to see that marriage isn't just about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right person through the refining fire of covenant love. Number 5, marriage as a lifelong commitment through all seasons. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." That truth is as real for marriage as it is for the turning of the earth. Every couple will walk through seasons, some bursting with life, others stripped bare like winter trees. And there's the springtime of marriage, when everything feels new and exciting. Love blooms easily. Laughter comes often. Every glance across the room carries a spark. Then comes the summer, the season of stability and routine, where roots grow deep, where you learn each other's rhythms and build a life together. But autumn comes too. Sometimes it arrives as challenges, a job loss, misunderstandings, the weariness of daily responsibilities. The air turns crisp with tension, and you feel the leaves of certain dreams fall to the ground. And then there's winter, the cold seasons, times when your marriage may feel distant, when the warmth seems to have gone, when the days are long and gray. It's in these seasons that the meaning of lifelong matters most. Culture tells us, if it's not making you happy, you can leave. God says, "What I have joined together, that no one separate." Mark 10:9. The seasons will change, but covenant love stands unshaken. It's in the winters of marriage that you choose to stoke the fire, to keep showing up, to pray harder, to believe God for a spring you can't yet see. When a couple walks through all 4 seasons over and over and remains faithful, their love becomes a testimony. It says to the watching world, God is faithful, and we will be too. And over time, that faithfulness turns into a beauty that young love cannot imitate, because it's been tested and proven true. Number 6, marriage as a partnership in God's mission. Marriage is not just about building a home together. It's about building the kingdom together. From the moment God brought Adam and Eve together, He gave them a shared mission. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Genesis, that command wasn't just about having children, it was about stewardship, influence, and impact. God designed marriage so that 2 people, united in Him, could accomplish more for His purposes than they could alone. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, "2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor." Your marriage is meant to be a powerhouse for the gospel, a place where your combined gifts, talents, and passions are multiplied for eternal work. This means praying together, not just for your needs, but for God's will in your neighborhood, your church, your workplace, your nation. It means opening your home to hospitality, serving side by side, encouraging one another to step into your individual callings while strengthening your shared one. Think of Priscilla and Aquila in Acts 18. They were tent makers by trade, but also spiritual builders, mentoring leaders like Apollos and strengthening churches. Their marriage was a ministry. Yours can be too. When you and your spouse lock arms for the sake of the gospel, you stop seeing each other as opponents in disagreements and start seeing each other as teammates in a divine assignment. And here's the beautiful truth. Every time you serve God together, every time you choose kingdom work over personal comfort, your marriage is strengthened. Because you're not just living for each other, you're living for the one who brought you together for such a time as this. Number 7. Marriage as a foretaste of eternal union with Christ. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible frames marriage as more than just a human relationship. It's a shadow of something far greater. The last book of the Bible reveals this truth in stunning beauty. Let us rejoice and be glad, and give him glory, for the wedding of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. Revelation 19:7. This is the ultimate wedding, the marriage between Christ and his redeemed people. Earthly marriage is a rehearsal for that day. Every time a husband chooses to love his wife with patience and sacrifice, he is acting out the heart of Christ. Every time a wife responds with trust, honor, and devotion, she is echoing the Church's response to her Savior. The covenant love between husband and wife whispers to the world, "One day we will stand before our bridegroom and be united with him forever." This eternal perspective changes everything. It helps you see that your marriage isn't just about surviving bills, raising kids, or planning retirement. It's about preparing each other for eternity. It's about sharpening one another's faith, encouraging one another to keep running the race, and helping each other love Jesus more than anything else in this life. And here's the wonder. In heaven, your marriage will no longer exist in its earthly form, but the love you cultivated here, the Christ-like love, the sacrificial love, the enduring love, will last forever. Your marriage, when rooted in God, becomes a daily reminder of the joy, safety, and perfect union we will have with Christ for all eternity. Conclusion: returning to God's vision for marriage. When we strip away the world's definitions, the trends, and the shallow promises, we see marriage for what it truly is: a holy covenant designed in heaven, built on oneness, sustained through every season, and lived out as a mission for the kingdom. It is not a fragile agreement based on fleeting feelings. It is a divine union meant to reflect Christ's unbreakable love for his church. If you are married, this is your call: to see your spouse not as your opponent in the hard moments, but as your God-given partner in life and in mission. To fight for unity when division knocks at your door. To choose holiness over temporary happiness. To remember that every act of kindness, forgiveness, and service is a glimpse of eternity. If you are waiting for marriage, this is your invitation to prepare your heart now for covenant love. To let God shape you into someone who can love with his kind of faithfulness. To understand that marriage is not the finish line of love, it's the starting line of a lifelong journey toward Christ-likeness, together. The world may treat marriage like a fragile thing, but in God's hands it is unshakable. It's not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because when two hearts are joined by the one who created love itself, the vows spoken at the altar become more than promises. They become a living testimony that God is real, God is faithful, and God's love endures forever. So let's return to his vision. Let's hold fast to covenant. Let's live out the kind of marriages that make the world look at us and see Jesus. And may our love stories, whether already written or still waiting to be told, reflect the greatest love story of all: Christ and his bride for eternity.